The beginning after the end is like Mushoku Tensei, but with a few extra steps, and maybe better in some areas. So let's talk about that. I've known about this series for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, maybe even longer. It's been a series that has been name dropped to me for a considerable amount of time, even before I became very aware of Mushoku Tensei and kind of what impact it would have on the anime community. And I think anyone that has, been a part of the anime community, has watched my channel, knows I really enjoy Mushoku Tensei. It is a great anime, it is a great light novel series, I love covering it, and I'm excited for Season 2 to come out eventually. And so, when I made my Mushoku Tensei content, like anime reviews and my light novel review, and I still need to do more light novel reviews, people started to be even more adamant about me starting the beginning after the end, which is the series I want to be covering. And after sitting down, I'm around chapter 64 at this moment, but I'm going to be covering kind of like the beginning segments to kind of do a full-on recommendation for those that are unaware about the series, but also just talk about its humble beginnings and how it's very, very similar to Mushoku Tensei. And I want to discuss all of this, okay? So, as you can see, it's a webtoon, and it really does start off basically just like Mushoku Tensei. Like, honestly, from the first chapter, you see the character reincarnated, which is a typical, isekai type stuff. But you have it to where the character's reincarnated, you see him from his birth, you see the mother and father, which is very reminiscent of Mushoku Tensei's first episode. Like, if you have watched the first episode of Mushoku Tensei, and you remember how the faces looked of his parents, like Rudy's parents, you will see just the similarities there. But it doesn't just stop there. You have just the overall upbringing, the way they take care of him, the way he's in this house that's in the middle of nowhere. Everything about this beginning is basically the exact same as Mushoku Tensei. Now, I do know that Mushoku Tensei apparently came out before, the beginning after the end. And I feel like most likely if I was to dive deep into it, I'd probably find out that this series was heavily inspired by such series, Mushoku Tensei. Because when you just see everything about how he's trying to learn how to, train, how to walk again. He's a child, but he's not, really a child. And you see that, his mother's taking care of him, trying to teach him and all that. When you, see this stuff, and you see him, eventually find a magic book to learn magic, it's like, whoa, this is literally Rudy. Like, legitimately, this is Rudy from Mushoku Tensei discovering the magic book and learning magic throughout the series. And this is the exact same thing. You literally see pretty much a similarity here to the beginning, literally reading a book and trying to hide away in a room and all that, and the parents are unaware that, our main character here, Arthur, or Rudy in Mushoku Tensei, is learning magic. There is just a lot here, and the magic system is kind of very similar. Basically, you have it to where people don't normally start at a young age of magic, but thanks to him being a child and having kind of his memories from his previous life, he's able to put more attention to learning magic, and thanks to starting so early, he's able to not have certain habits that adults would. For instance, here's a good example. Later on, when, our character gets a little bit older and he's separated from his family, once again, very similar to, Mushoku Tensei, he meets this individual here, like Sylvia. I believe that's how you say her name. And this character basically tells him, hey, you're not like a typical human, you're learning magic at a young age, you're not waiting until you're 17 or 18 to learn magic, shouldn't you be able to potentially learn magic or, I guess take in magic from your environment while moving? Because FYI, with this world and the way it works, is that magic, to gain more mana and stuff, to absorb mana, you have to stand still and meditate. But thanks to our character Arthur, being new to the world, new to magic, and learning at a very young age, he won't have those certain habits that adults would. And once again, you can see the correlation there with Mushoku Tensei and how Rudy's able to cast magic without, incantations, without speaking, etc. And so when you see this, it's like, okay, so he's learning different ways of magic that people could theoretically learn, but just, they don't because they're unaware of it. They build up this habit throughout their life. So there is, like I said, a lot of similarities. Even the father figure as well. I really love the father figure. I instantly noticed there was a big contrast, or a connection with this father figure of Arthur in, this manga or webcomic to Paul in, Mushoku Tensei. Now, there is differences, and I guess let's get into that, because obviously I made a major connection that the series are very similar, but let's talk about the differences, because this isn't just a Mushoku Tensei clone. I do want to make sure I make that fundamentally clear, because I know by the way I've kind of started this video off, it just seems like it's just straight up copying Mushoku Tensei's homework, and to be fair, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with copying someone else's homework, as long as if you change it a little bit and you try to do something distinct with it. That's why I really love the reincarnation genre, just characters reincarnating into a different world, because there's many different formats and ways to do the said story, depending on how the writer is, if they're gifted or not. And so, using the template that is Mushoku Tensei, I don't think this is necessarily a problem to have something very similar. So the differences is what really stands out. And so, one big thing is if you were not a fan of, let's say, Rudy's overall perverted nature, if anyone's watched Mushoku Tensei, or if you've, read the light novel, or somehow you've read the manga, you most likely know Rudy's character, of how he is, at least early on, very, very early on, how perverted he is. And if you're one of those individuals that like Mushoku Tensei, but you absolutely loathe Rudy's perverted nature, then I think you probably will really enjoy this, because all the elements of pervertedness is gone. Like, there is nothing to see, at least so far, that is really over the top to that extent. And so, if that was something that turned you away from Mushoku Tensei, then do not worry. Even though this is obviously copying Mushoku Tensei in some areas, that is just axed completely. And also, I did make sure to tell you guys, I said the father figure reminds me a lot of Paul. He does not cheat on his wife. I do want to make sure I say that as well. So that is a core difference too. We don't have that little thing going on early on where Paul cheats on, Rudy's mother. We have in this, the father figure is actually a really honorable father figure, and I guess Paul is too, but there's a lot to be said that goes into spoiler territory that I'm not going to really dive into at this moment. But anyways, the point is that there is differences and there is similarities, and I think it comes with the territory of how the story is done. And I really think that, at least from what I have read and the way the story has presented its world and magic, and the overall subplot of how our character has now been given this gift from, a dragon, and how you see him, now carrying on this legacy, this weird legacy or history, this secret that he will not find out about until a very long time, it leads to a lot of mystery, what's gonna happen, and we actually get to see the character grow and slowly age throughout the story. I'll straight up say, I know around, chapter 100 or whatever, I've seen pictures of it, to where the character actually gets a lot older, like an adult. And so, when you start the series, the character starts off as a child, and it's wonderful to see a character actually age. Seeing a character get slowly older, getting to see their journey through life, and how they overcome certain events, or how they experience things in this new life. It's very organic, and feels very refreshing. I love reincarnated stories or isekai stories that do this, because it allows you to understand why a character could have a certain mindset in said world, which is something that instantly comes into play with this, actually. Around this episode, or this chapter, actually, I don't know why I'm calling it episode, you see a very important thing happen, to where our character, is seeing his family in trouble. Their family is under attack by basically raiders / bandits. The only way to save themselves or get out of there is for the father to kind of, sacrifice himself to be able to get our MC Arthur out of that area. And come to find out, thanks to circumstances, the mother is actually pregnant. And so Arthur has a younger sibling on the way, and he realizes his duty. He wants to protect his mother, and he wants to protect his unborn sibling. And so, thanks to him already having experience from his previous life, you see what he tries to do. He tries to do anything in his power to be able to protect his mother and try to maybe save his family, which leads him up into this situation where he's separated and he meets this individual that teaches him a lot more about magic. And so, there's a lot. There is a lot. I'm not doing it justice because I'm summarizing events, and I definitely want to do a video that really just dives into the nitty-gritty. I will do that, because I think this series is definitely deserving of it. It's one of those series that you really can dive in and dissect. It's not your typical fantasy story that just seems super, super, super generic. It actually has, like I said, all the good that Mushoku Tensei has, and it does change it a little bit to make it even better. Look at this. You're not going to tell me that doesn't look like Rudy. You're not. But, anyways, let's get back on topic. So, I think overall, what I've read so far, I think that it really has deviated from the common beginning, that once again you draw the connection with MT. and it's become its own thing. It's its own entity, at least where I'm at in chapter 60-something. So I think if anyone wants to get into this, you really should. I really urge you. If you're a big fan, you really should. Like, if you're a big fan of MT, you really should start this. Now, I guess let's talk about the character's previous life, okay? So the character's previous life, he was a king, which I think this is a very unique beginning, actually. And let me explain. Basically, the MC, at least from what I've seen from flashbacks, comes from a medieval type of area. Like, early on it tells you, like, he came from a time period that obviously had more technology, but there were still kings and queens, etc. And he was a king in a previous life called King Gray. And it's like, oh, wow. So it has this different format to it than you would normally see. It's not just a typical high schooler or someone that's, you know, a hikikomori and all that, you know. You have an individual that was a king of high status dies and he's just restarted. It's like, oh, okay, that's a little bit different. And so I do appreciate the stark contrast. Basically, if you're a king, you're going to be already good with fighting. And so that adds on to his skills already. He should be already very good with the sword since he was a king. And now that he's learning magic, he's going to be able to use a sword and magic. So there's some nice little differences here that I really appreciate with the writing of these chapters. And so, yeah. I wanted to make this video to really just shout out this series. I've been having a good time with it. I've been reading it, and I wanted to just stop myself from really just instantly catching up, because I wanted to shout the series before I get to the conclusion of, like, the latest content of the chapters, and then eventually dive into the novels, and I wanted to make a video before that. So, yeah, all I'm going to say is, read it. Yeah, that's literally, that's my words. Read it. If you want something good to read, you're interested in something like MT, because you have that itch for something, give this a read. You'll probably like it. I don't know how it's going to be later on. I can't say for how, like, the latest content is. I can't say for how the novels are. I don't know how the story still holds up. But at least from the early stuff I have read, like the first 60 or so chapters, it's good. It's really good. And I fully recommend it. If it stays consistent and gets even better, holy hell, we got a good one on our hands. So yeah, just a brief shout out to that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, you know, do leave me a like. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps with the algorithm and these videos to be noticed and all that. It helps me greatly. And so if you want to help out the channel, you want to help out me, please, you know, leave a like on the video and leave a comment as well. But with that, be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.